He set down a handful of silver for a plate no one else would touch, and then asked a question no one in that diner had ever asked before. The plate hits the counter with a dull knock, steam rising in thin curls. Laughter snaps from the tables when someone mutters something under their breath. Then a chair scrapes. Boots step forward. A man takes one biscuit, breaks it open slow, watches the heat lift from it, and the whole room seems to hold. He doesn't smile, doesn't speak, just takes a bite, and everything around him shifts in a way no one can quite name. Tell me, would you have noticed her? By the time the sun climbed over the low hills east of Silver Creek, the diner was already loud. Boots dragged dust across the wooden floor. Spurs tapped in uneven rhythm. Someone laughed too hard near the front counter, and a chair scraped back with a long, tired groan. The smell of bacon grease hung thick in the air, mixed with coffee that had been sitting on the burner too long. Behind the swinging kitchen door, none of that mattered. Hannah Price stood at the long prep table, sleeves rolled past her elbows, flour dusted along her forearms like pale ash. The dough beneath her hands was soft, steady, familiar. She pressed, folded, turned, pressed again. A rhythm she didn't have to think about. The oven breathed heat against her face. Firewood cracked low and steady. A knife tapped against the board somewhere to her left. A pot simmered slow. The room spoke in small sounds, and she moved between them without hurry. Out front, plates came back empty. They always did. Mr. Keaton passed through the doorway once, his vest already stained from the morning rush. He didn't say her name, never had, just gave a short nod toward the counter. More. Hannah wiped her hands on a cloth, reached for another lump of dough, and started again. No one asked who made the biscuits. They just ate. Money hit the counter. Voices moved on. Another wagon outside. Another order shouted. Another plate scraped clean. The bell above the door rang again. It rang all morning. But sometime after the second coffee pot ran dry, the noise shifted, just a little. Hannah didn't hear it at first. Not the man, not his boots, not the way the room seemed to hesitate for half a breath when he stepped in. She only noticed when the plates slowed coming back. One plate, still full. Mr. Keaton frowned at it like it was an insult, then shoved it toward the edge of the counter. A voice came from the front, low and even. "Leave it." Hannah glanced up just once through the narrow gap where the kitchen door never quite closed all the way. A man stood near the far end of the counter, tall, shoulders set like he carried weight without thinking about it. Hat brim low, shadow cutting across his face. Dust clung to his jeans and boots like he'd ridden hard to get here and hadn't bothered brushing it off. He picked up one biscuit. Not quick, not hungry. Careful. He turned it slightly in his fingers, as if weighing it, then took a bite. The noise in the diner went on. Someone laughed again. A fork clattered. But around him, there was a space that didn't quite fill back in. He didn't eat like the others, didn't rush, didn't talk. Just stood there, chewing slow. Hannah looked back down before anyone noticed her looking. Her hands didn't stop moving. Another biscuit cut, another tray filled. Into the oven. But something had shifted. A pause. Small. Barely there. Out front, the man took another bite. Then another. When the plate finally came back, it wasn't scraped clean the way the others were. There was nothing left at all. Not even crumbs. Mr. Keaton picked it up, glanced toward the front, then back toward the kitchen. His brow pulled tight for a second, like he couldn't place something. He didn't say a word. The man paid in cash. Hannah heard the coins before she saw them. Heavy, more than needed. They hit the wood with a dull, certain sound. No one thanked him. No one asked his name. The bell above the door rang again as he stepped out into the light. Dust followed him. The room filled back in. Voices returned. Orders shouted. Another plate slid across the counter. Hannah reached into the oven, pulled out the next tray, and set it down. Steam rose. She broke one open with her hands, watched the inside pull apart. Soft, warm, just right. For a moment she stood there, holding it. Then she set it down and kept working. Out on the street, the man didn't look back. But the next morning, before the first wagon rolled in, before the coffee had fully warmed, the bell rang again. And this time, Hannah heard it. The bell gave its short, tired ring. Not loud, not special, just enough to say someone had stepped in from the dust. She didn't turn right away. She slid a tray into the oven, shut the iron door, and wiped her hands on the same cloth she'd been using since dawn. Only then did she glance toward the gap in the kitchen door. Same man, same hat, same dust on his shoulders, same quiet way of standing like the room didn't need to notice him. He took the same seat. Far end of the counter. Not the cleanest one. Not the closest. Mr. Keaton walked over with a pot of coffee and poured without asking. "Biscuits," the man said. Just that. No extras. No meat. No eggs. Mr. Keaton hesitated for half a second, then nodded and turned toward the kitchen. Hannah was already reaching for the dough. The morning moved on around them. Orders shouted. Cups filled. A wagon creaked outside, wheels grinding slow over stone. Someone argued about the price of feed near the door. But there it was again. That small space. That pause that didn't belong. The plate went out. Hannah didn't watch this time. She didn't need to. She could hear it. Not the chewing. Not the fork. Just the quiet between bites. Slow. Like he was listening to something no one else could hear. A woman at the counter, Mrs. Dalton, always in a pressed dress even this far from anywhere proper, leaned toward Clara Voss, a girl barely grown, with ribbons still too bright for the dust of Silver Creek. "That the same man?" Clara whispered. Mrs. Dalton didn't lower her voice enough. "Been 2 days now." Clara glanced toward the far end. "For biscuits?" Mrs. Dalton's lips thinned. "For something." Hannah turned the dough again, pressed it flat, cut clean circles with the rim of a tin cup. Flour drifted up and settled on her hands. Out front, the man finished his plate. Clean again. He set his fork down carefully, not pushed aside. Placed. Then he reached into his pocket and set down coins. More than before. Mr. Keaton noticed that. So did Mrs. Dalton. Clara leaned forward, trying to see better without making it obvious. The man stood, adjusted his hat, and stepped back out into the sun. The bell rang behind him. This time, the room didn't quite go back to normal. "Strange," Clara said under her breath. Mrs. Dalton gave a soft, humorless laugh. "Men don't come back 3 mornings for nothing." Hannah kept working, but her hands slowed, just a touch. By the 4th morning, people were watching. Not openly, not yet, but they noticed when the bell rang, noticed when he walked in, noticed that he didn't look around, just took the same seat. "Biscuits." Same word, same tone. Mr. Keaton didn't hesitate this time. The plate went out quicker. Hannah caught herself listening again. That space, that quiet, then a crash. A plate hit the floor hard enough to crack. Laughter followed, rough and sharp. A man near the middle tables, red-faced and swaying, pointed toward the kitchen door. "Dry as chalk," he slurred. "Don't know how anyone eats that." The room picked it up. Not mean, not kind. Just noise. Mr. Keaton frowned but didn't step in. The man kicked at the broken plate, sending a biscuit sliding across the floor. Hannah stood still for a second. Then she stepped out from behind the door. Not all the way, just enough to reach the mess. She knelt, gathered the pieces, one by one. Quiet. Flour still on her hands. No one helped. No one stopped laughing. At the far end of the counter, the man hadn't touched his plate. Not yet. He watched. Not at the drunk, not at the others. At her. Hannah didn't look up. She finished picking up the pieces, stood, and turned back toward the kitchen. That's when the stool scraped. The man stood. He set money on the counter. Full price, more than full. Untouched plate in front of him. He didn't say a word. Didn't look at anyone. Just walked out. The bell rang behind him. And this time, no one laughed after. The next morning he came back, earlier than before. The sun hadn't fully cleared the ridge yet, the light still pale and thin across the street. Mr. Keaton was wiping down the counter. Hannah was already at the stove. The bell rang. She didn't need to look. "Biscuits," he said. Mr. Keaton nodded. Hannah set the tray in. A few minutes later, the plate went out. But when the man paid, he didn't sit. He took the plate with him, walked outside, and settled on the bench beneath the narrow strip of shade along the wall, alone. The town moved around him. Wagons passed, dust lifted, voices carried. But he ate there, slow, like always. Inside, Mrs. Dalton watched through the window. Clara leaned closer beside her. "He won't even sit in here now," Clara murmured. Mrs. Dalton's eyes stayed fixed on the man outside. "No," she said quietly. "He won't." Hannah stood by the stove, hands resting against the worn wood. She could see him through the glass, just a shape in the light, eating something she made, in a place that had never made room for her. She turned back to the fire, added another log. The flame caught slow, then steady, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't rush the next batch. The dough rested a second longer under her hands. The fire kept its steady breath. Outside, Wade sat on the bench, finishing the last of his plate in the morning light. Inside, the room had changed. Not loud, not open, just a shift. Mrs. Dalton didn't laugh anymore. She watched. Clara Voss leaned closer to her, whispering things that didn't carry clearly, but the tone did. Curious, sharp, like a thread being pulled. By noon, the talk had spread past the bars femme of the diner. It moved through the general store, slipped between the feed sacks, crossed the porch of the post office where men stood reading week-old newspapers. "Man from Red Mesa Ridge," someone said, "comes every day now. For biscuits." "For her," another voice answered. By afternoon, it had grown. Stories always did. "Came from the east," a woman said near the well. "Didn't last long there." "Heard she left in a hurry," another added. "Trouble follows some folks." No one said where they heard it. No one needed to. Back at the diner, Mr. Keaton counted coins behind the counter, slower than usual. His jaw set tight. Mrs. Dalton stood beside him, gloved hands resting on the wood like she owned the place. "You're losing good customers," she said, not loud, not soft. Mr. Keaton didn't look up. "Place is full. Not with the right kind." Clara stood just behind her, eyes flicking toward the kitchen door. "She's stirring talk," Clara said. "You can hear it all over town." Mr. Keaton finally lifted his head. "She cooks." Mrs. Dalton smiled thin. "Then let her cook somewhere else." Silence sat there a moment. Heavy. Mr. Keaton looked toward the kitchen door. It swung once, slow, then settled. The fire inside cracked. Hannah didn't hear the words, but she felt something change. It came in the way the next order wasn't called out to her, in the way the plates slowed coming back, in the way the air, near the door felt held. She finished the tray, set it down, waited. Nothing. Mr. Keaton pushed through the door then, wiping his hands on a rag that had already done too much work. He didn't step far in, didn't meet her eyes. "There's a bit of a lull," he said. "You can take a break." Hannah looked at the counter, still stacked, still waiting. Her hands rested on the edge of the table. "I can keep going," she said. Mr. Keaton shook his head once. "No need." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small cloth pouch. Set it on the table between them. Coins inside. Not many. "Take a few days," he added. "Let things settle." The words landed flat, like something already decided. Hannah didn't touch the pouch. The fire popped behind her. The oven door creaked slightly as heat shifted inside. Out front, a chair scraped. A voice rose, then dropped again. She wiped her hands slowly, one palm, then the other. "Is this because of them?" she asked. Mr. Keaton shifted his weight. "It's just how things are. Not unkind. Not kind either. Just done." Hannah picked up the pouch. The weight of it sat light in her hand. Too light. She walked to the hook by the door, took down her apron, folded it once, set it on the table. Flour still clung to the fabric. She didn't brush it off. The back door opened with a soft pull. The hinges gave a low, tired sound. Outside, the alley was quiet. A narrow strip of packed dirt, a barrel by the wall, a broken crate leaning against the fence. The sun sat high now. No shade. Hannah stepped out and let the door close behind her. The latch caught with a dull click. She stood there a moment, hands empty. From inside, she could hear it. Someone else moving in the kitchen. A pan set down wrong. A spoon dropped. A voice, uncertain, asking where the flour was kept. Hannah didn't turn back. She walked a few steps into the light and stopped. That's when she heard boots behind her. Not rushed, not hesitant. Just there. Wade Callahan stood at the end of the alley, hat low against the sun. He hadn't come through the front. He must have walked around. He looked at her. Not at the door. Not at the pouch in her hand. Just her. "What happened?" he asked. Hannah didn't answer right away. She glanced once at the door, then back at him. "They said I should take a few days," she said. Wade's gaze didn't change. He nodded once, like he understood more than she'd said. He stepped closer, boots quiet on the dirt. "My place got a stove," he said. "Been cold too long." Hannah's fingers tightened slightly around the pouch. He didn't reach for her, didn't move closer than he needed to. "Room's yours if you want it," he added. "No hurry." The alley stayed quiet. A fly buzzed near the barrel. The wind shifted dust along the fence line. Hannah looked down at her hands. Flour still there. She rubbed her thumb against her palm. It left a faint streak. When she looked up again, Wade was still standing there, waiting, not pushing. She nodded once, small, but enough. Wade turned without another word, walked toward the street, not checking if she followed. Hannah stood there a second longer. Then she stepped after him. The door behind her stayed closed, and inside, someone else was already learning how to make her biscuits. The road out of Silver Creek ran pale and dry beneath the afternoon sun. Dust lifted with each step Hannah took, settling again just as quietly behind her. Wade walked a few paces ahead, not looking back, not slowing down. He didn't need to. She followed. His horse was tied just beyond the last hitching post. A dark bay, calm, head low, reins slack. Wade untied it with one hand, checked the saddle out of habit, then turned toward her. "Can ride?" he asked. Hannah nodded. He didn't offer a hand right away, just waited. She placed her foot in the stirrup and pulled herself up, steady, practiced. He mounted behind her, not too close, not too far, enough to guide the horse, enough to keep his distance. They rode north, past the last fence of town, past the wind-bent cottonwoods near the dry creek. The land opened up into long stretches of scrub and stone, the horizon wide and unbroken. No one spoke. The only sound was the rhythm of hooves and the wind slipping past. By the time the sun dipped low, the ranch came into view. Red Mesa Ridge. A cluster of weathered buildings sat against the slope. House, barn, a lean-to with tools stacked in careful order. The place didn't look abandoned, just quiet, like it had been waiting. Wade dismounted first, tied the horse, then stepped back. "Kitchen's through there," he said, nodding toward the main house. Hannah climbed down on her own. The porch boards creaked under her weight. The door opened without a sound. Inside, the air held the faint smell of old wood and cooled ash. The stove sat in the corner, iron, solid, cold. Hannah stepped closer, ran her fingers along the edge. A thin line of dust came away on her skin. Wade stood in the doorway, hat in his hands. "Needs fixing," he said. "Draft's off." She nodded. He set his hat back on, stepped outside, and left her there. No instructions, no questions, just space. It took her the better part of the evening to bring the stove back to life. She found dry wood stacked behind the shed, kindling tucked in a crate. The flint and steel hung on a nail where someone had left it years ago. The first spark didn't catch. The second did. A small flame curled up, hesitant at first, then steady. Hannah fed it slow, let it grow. By nightfall, the stove breathed heat again. She mixed dough by lamplight. The bowl was old but clean, the flour sack folded tight at the corner. Everything simple, everything enough. The biscuits went in. She stood there watching the oven like she used to, not rushing, just waiting. When she pulled them out, the smell filled the room. Warm, familiar. It settled into the walls like it belonged there. Outside, boots crossed the porch. Wade stepped in, paused just inside the door. He didn't speak, just took off his hat. Hannah set one biscuit on a plate, pushed it across the table. He stepped closer, picked it up, took a bite, same as before. Slow. He nodded once, not to her, to himself. Then he set the rest down and moved back toward the door. "I'll be in the barn," he said, and left. The days found their shape after that. Morning came with wind across the ridge. Hannah lit the stove, mixed dough, baked. Wade worked the land, checked fences, rode out and back before the sun climbed too high. They crossed paths in quiet ways. A cup of coffee left on the table, a bucket of water filled before she asked. A door fixed that hadn't quite shut right the day before. No talk, but no distance either. On the fourth night, the wind changed. It came down from the hills, sharper, colder. It found the cracks in the walls and pressed through them with a low, steady whistle. Hannah sat by the table, mending a tear in her sleeve. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. A sound came from the door, not a knock. Something lighter. She stood, walked over, paused. then opened it. Nothing there. Just the wind. But on the floor, just inside the threshold, a folded piece of paper. She picked it up. The edges were rough, the ink still dark. She opened it under the lamp. Some things follow you farther than you think. The words sat there, simple, cold. Hannah folded the paper back up, held it between her fingers for a long moment. Then she set it down on the table. Didn't tear it. Didn't hide it. Just left it there. 2 days later, riders came up the road. 4 men, dust-covered, driving a small herd ahead of them. Cattle buyers by the look of their coats and the way they sat their horses. Wade met them in the yard. Business was short, straight. They talked numbers, looked over the herd, walked the fence line. One of the men wiped his face with a bandana. "Got anything to eat?" Wade nodded toward the house. "Kitchen's warm." They stepped inside, bringing the smell of road and leather with them. Hannah stood by the stove, didn't step back, didn't speak, just set plates out. Biscuits, fresh. The men sat, ate without much thought at first. Then one of them slowed. He turned the biscuit in his hand, took another bite. His brow pulled in, like something had reached him from far off. "Hold on," he said. The others looked up. He chewed slow, swallowed. "Where'd you learn this?" he asked, not looking at Wade, looking at her. Hannah didn't answer. The man leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing, not in doubt, but in memory. "Winter Run, 2 years back," he said. "Rail camp outside Flagstaff. Thought we'd freeze clean through." No one spoke. "There was a woman there," he went on. "Kept a fire going day and night. Fed anyone that came through. Didn't charge a dime." He set the biscuit down. "This tastes like that kitchen." Silence settled in the room. The wind pressed against the walls again. Hannah stood still. The man looked at her properly now, not guessing, knowing. "You were there," he said. It wasn't a question. Hannah didn't nod, didn't shake her head. She just turned back to the stove, lifted the next tray out, set it down. Steam rose, and for the first time since she'd left Silver Creek, the past didn't feel like something chasing her. It felt like something finally catching up. Word traveled faster than wagons ever could. By the time the cattle buyers rode out from Red Mesa Ridge, the story had already turned once, then twice, like a coin passed through too many hands. By the time it reached Silver Creek, it no longer sounded like a rumor. It sounded like a mistake. Back at the diner, the morning crowd came in thinner than usual. Mr. Keaton stood behind the counter, wiping the same spot over and over. The stove in the kitchen burned uneven, the biscuits coming out pale on one side, too hard on the other. Clara Voss took a bite and set hers down without finishing it. Mrs. Dalton didn't eat at all. "Something's off," Clara said. Mrs. Dalton didn't answer. She was listening to a man near the door, fresh in from the road, dust still on his coat. "Said she kept a whole camp alive through winter," the man was saying. "Didn't take a cent. Stayed till the last of them could walk again." Another voice joined in. "That out near Flagstaff?" "That's right." Silence followed. Not loud, not sudden, just spreading. Mr. Keaton set the rag down. He looked toward the kitchen door. No one moved. 2 days later, Wade rode back into Silver Creek. Hannah sat behind him, steady in the saddle, her hands resting light but certain against the leather. The town looked the same as when she'd left. Same dust, same porch boards, same windows catching the sun. But it didn't feel the same. People noticed. They always did. Wade didn't slow until he reached the diner. He tied the horse at the post without looking around, helped Hannah down without touching more than he needed to. Then he walked to the door and pushed it open. The bell rang. This time it sounded louder. Inside, the room went still. Not empty, not frozen, just aware. Hannah stepped in behind him. No one laughed. No one whispered. They watched. Mr. Keaton stood straight, hands resting flat on the counter. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Wade didn't speak. He moved to the side, giving Hannah the space to walk past him. She crossed the room. Same floorboards, same tables, same narrow path to the kitchen. The door stood half open. She pushed it the rest of the way. Inside, the stove burned, but not right. A tray sat crooked in the oven, the fire too high, the dough left too long. Hannah stepped forward, set her hands on the table. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she reached for the pan, turned it, adjusted the fire. Simple things, things that didn't need words. Out front, no one sat down. They waited. The first tray came out. Steam rose. The smell followed. It filled the room slow, steady, like it had been missing and finally found its way back. Hannah carried the plate out herself, set it down on the counter. No announcement, no apology, just placed it there. A small boy, no more than 7, stood near his father's side. He reached up without asking, took one biscuit, and bit into it. He chewed once, then looked up. "This tastes like home," he said. No one answered, but something shifted. Not loud, not all at once. Just enough. Mrs. Dalton looked down at her hands. Clara Voss took a biscuit next. Slower this time. She didn't rush the bite. Mr. Keaton stepped back from the counter. Not away. Just giving space. Outside, the sun dipped lower. Wade stood on the porch, leaning against the post, hat in his hand. He didn't go in, didn't need to. After a while, Hannah stepped out. She closed the door behind her. The bell didn't ring this time. They stood there, side by side, looking out at the road. Wagons passed. Dust lifted. The town went on, but quieter. Wade glanced at her once. Not long. Just enough. "I didn't come back for biscuits," he said. Hannah didn't answer. She didn't have to. The wind moved through the street, carrying the scent of fresh bread out into the evening. And for the first time, it stayed. Not the quiet, not the smell of bread drifting through an open door, but that feeling of being seen without having to explain yourself. If you stood where Hannah once stood, hands dusted with flour, watching a room full of people pass you by, you might know how easy it is to shrink, to believe that silence is all you're meant for. And if you ever found someone who didn't ask you to prove your worth, someone who simply stood beside you and let your work speak, you'd understand why she never needed to say much at all. Some things don't heal with words. They settle slowly, in the way a door stays open, in the way someone returns, again and again, without making a show of it. In the way love chooses you, not loudly, not for the world, but steady enough to hold. Maybe that's the kind of love we all hope for, not the kind that rescues, but the kind that recognizes. If this story found its way into something you've felt before, I'd like to hear it. Where did it meet you? And if you'd like to sit with more stories like this, ones that take their time, ones that leave something behind, you're always welcome here.